Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Fishy Rishi has survived 100 days in number 10, twice as long as Liz Truss, who his camp deposed in an anti-democratic coup, let's be honest about it. But it's no surprise the MSM's puppet PM has failed to inspire the great British public.
Speaker, I obviously regret appointing someone who has had to resign in these circumstances.
You were filmed earlier without a seatbelt on, Prime Minister, in your car. Would you address that for?
But with a bombshell Times poll revealing nearly 3/4 of Brits have lost faith in the PM, I'll explain why the Tories must replace Sunak to avoid a socialist coalition from hell. That's in my digest next. I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel too. Joining me tonight, Dominique Samuel, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Then at 10:15, former Brexit Secretary David Davis joins me live to rate Rishi's rocky premiership so far and outline a battle plan for the Tory election victory. Also coming up, Arch-Royalist Anne Widdecombe delivers a powerful message to the King. Do not invite Harry and Meghan to your historic coronation for the good of the country. It's a controversial view from the former Conservative minister who's going to reveal why at 9:45. I mean, personally, I'm not sure why Charles would ever dream of inviting them after that vindictive anti-monarchy atrocity on Netflix.
This fairy tale is embedding itself in a nation that is having a pretty toxic debate about the European Union.
But can you believe that Britain-hating historian has just accepted an OBE from the King? At 10:30, I'll ask my panel why lefties like David Olusoga and Alan Cumming accept honours when they clearly just dislike our country's heritage. And at 9:35, my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, give their expert take on whether the bombshell bath photo that stunned royal circles is reason enough for Prince Andrew to fight for a comeback. Elsewhere on the show, as 500,000 listeners ditch Radio 2 for golden oldie stations, have the BBC's ill-judged diversity drive and ageist policies just ruined the station? BBC legends Mike Reid, Liz Kershaw and Martin Bell do battle on that in The Clash at 9:20. Plus, after popular kids game The Sims introduces trans mastectomy scars and chest binders for child characters.
Gosh, I love seeing the scars in here with this shirt. What a good choice. So this would be the shapewear. Makes complete sense.
So have computer games become a Trojan horse for dangerous woke propaganda? We'll explore that in the Media Buzz at 10. Tomorrow's newspapers hot off the press and a new Greatest Britain Union jackass on the way too. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Happy Thursday to you. Is Rishi Sunak the solution to the Tories' problems? I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think so. My digest on that straight after the news headlines at 9 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. The top stories on GB News tonight. The Bank of England has raised its base rate today from 3.5% to 4%. That's the 10th consecutive increase, adding that inflation has begun to fall. It also says the UK's set to enter recession this year, but stresses the economic downturn could be shorter and less severe than previously thought. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, supports the Bank of England's decision as well.
We recognise it is very difficult for families, businesses up and down the country when interest rates go up, but much harder for them would be if we didn't take decisive steps to bring down inflation, and that's why the Bank of England is absolutely right to do what they've done today, and we in the government must make sure we support them by what I do in the budget to make sure that we make it easier, not harder, for them to do what we all want to do, which is to halve inflation.
And in other news today, police in Lancashire have said they have now found a potential new witness and are speaking to her in the search for Nicola Bulley. That's after they'd released an image of a woman who was seen in the area where the mother of two disappeared. The 45-year-old went missing last Friday in St Michael's-on-Wyre whilst walking her dog. As part of the hunt, divers are still searching the River Wyre. Now, the Business Secretary is urging energy companies to suspend the outrageous practice, it says, of forcibly installing prepayment meters. Earlier, Ofgem announced it was launching an urgent investigation into British Gas after reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing the prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. The boss of British Gas owner Centrica says he's horrified. Energy and Climate Minister Graham Stewart says it's appalling.
I brought in all the suppliers last week to talk about how we better look after vulnerable people, because there are clear rules and they have obviously not been followed, and therefore I need the regulator and I need the companies to do the right thing by people who are in the most difficult of circumstances and have been treated on this evidence appallingly.
Energy giant Shell says profits have increased by more than 53%, with earnings of more than £68 billion last year. That's the company's highest profit in its 115-year history. The energy giant has benefited from soaring oil prices due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A Downing Street spokesman said the Prime Minister understood that people were angry over Shell's record profits at a time of soaring household energy prices. And an independent inquiry into the 1998 Omagh bombing has been ordered by the Northern Ireland Secretary. The announcement follows long-running legal action brought by Michael Gallagher, whose son Aidan was killed in the real IRA bombing. 29 people died in that explosion in County Tyrone. Hundreds more were injured. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton tonight.
"100 days of Fishy Rishi and Number 10 are up, and while the globalist shills, political establishment and mainstream media might be happy, the great British public is certainly not. The anti-democratic coup that saw the parliamentary party install Sunak after ignoring their members by deposing both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss in quick succession has left deep and barely concealed wounds. The Conservative Democratic organisation is fighting to ensure the rights of party supporters is not further diminished, but it's hard to see how a group so divided, really, can successfully fight the next election. And the polls are catastrophic for Sunak, far worse than they ever were for Boris or even Liz. As it stands today, the Tories would win just 67 seats if an election were held, with Labour holding a consistent 20-plus lead in the polls. Meanwhile, a new Times survey found that 72% of Brits believe Sunak will not be PM after the next election. So why all of a sudden? Is there not the constant clamour for a leadership change by the MSM, who made challenges to both Boris and Liz a self-fulfilling prophecy with their constant hysterical coverage? I'll tell you why. Because Sunak is their man. Their man who can hold the fort without doing anything required to fundamentally reform the UK until slippery Starmer is installed as PM and moves us ever closer to the EU. So the question is, facing such a seismic wipeout, it could be a historic wipeout, should the Tories be bold and replace him to prevent electoral annihilation and a socialist coalition from hell? Well, I'm going to be honest with you tonight. I think the answer is increasingly becoming absolutely they must. Listen to a very worried Lord Lister. Now, this is a key Boris ally, but a person who has much respect in the Conservative Party. This is what he had to say this morning.
Reported in several papers that the path to victory is a very narrow one. I think it is a narrow one. I think it's going to be quite difficult for him. He's not a Boris Johnson. He's not able
which
to
you mean?
He can't get out there and tell the story in the way Boris Johnson could.
But look, I do also understand those who say the Tories would look like a laughingstock, an international joke if they focus on the leadership question again. The problem is, I just don't think Sunak has it in him to do what's required to fundamentally save his party and the country in the next 500 days, especially as he clings on to a disgustingly high tax agenda. Sunak has promised to stop the boats, but he also has no intention of the UK departing the ECHR. The only way, I believe, we can actually make that important goal a reality. But there have been positive moments too, including Sunak's bold move to stand up to scheming Sturgeon's gender extremism. So here are some thin-on-the-ground best bits.
It is unfair that people come here illegally. What do the unions and Just Stop Oil have in common? They bankroll him and his party, Mr. Speaker. This is about supporting aspiration, Mr. Speaker, and that's what this government is proud to do. If he can't be trusted to stand up for the women in his party, he can't be trusted to stand up for Britain. This is simply about protecting UK-wide legislation, about ensuring the safety of women and children. This is not about the devolution settlement.
Good moments, but I have to say they have been a bit outweighed by the negatives.
Work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
What do you have? Do you work in a business? Do you want some fruit? I'm homeless, and I'm actually a homeless person at the minute. But
Mr. Speaker, I obviously regret appointing someone who has had to resign in these circumstances.
You were filmed earlier without a seatbelt on, Prime Minister, in your car. Would you address that for us?
It was no longer appropriate for Nadhim Zahawi to continue in government, and that's why he's no longer there.
Overall, though, I can't help to feel but the Tories are just leaving Sunak in post to lose the next election respectively. That is completely unacceptable. The party's MPs need to wake up, and wake up fast, to the danger of leaving the country in the hands of a nightmare Labour, SNP, Lib Dem, Green coalition from hell for 5 years. To respond now, my superstar panel. Political commentator Dominique Samuels, top Tory Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. So, Sean, straight to you. This is the party that you love. Level with me. Rishi Sunak isn't cutting the mustard as Prime Minister.
Look, there's no way to get around that. Those figures make for some very tough reading. There's no way to get around it. And it looks like since Boris has gone, it's been a downward slope.
Oh, of course.
But my words to Rishi would be, don't panic. We've been here before. John Major is in a similar situation. If you really want to...
John Major was also in a similar situation in 1996, and look at how that turned out, Sean.
That's true, but you've got to be positive about these things. And I'd say to Rishi, fix the big things that matter, tax, economy, illegal immigration. But if you're Rishi, you've got to believe...
But he's not lowering taxes before the next election, and he's not leaving the ECHR.
If you're Rishi, you've got to believe you're going to do these things.
But he's not.
Because if he doesn't believe, then nobody else will.
But he's not doing them.
And the other thing he has on his side is that Starmer's not up to much. It's easy now for Starmer to look like he's running a show, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that Starmer...
That's all he needs to do.
The only thing that Starmer has done is been at least half responsible for the state the country finds itself in by backing the unions. He has said nothing about the strikes, nothing at all. He didn't even bring it up yesterday.
Look, Sean, later in the show, by the way, this is really important, we're going to be talking about the dangerous socialist agenda that Starmer wants to bring to this country, and we've got really important revelations on that later. So I totally agree with you about Starmer. But the reality is, Dominique, Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister is not working. But the MSM aren't saying there's a leadership crisis like they were when Liz Truss and Boris Johnson were in post, because they like the guy, don't they? This is their guy.
I mean, I'm not sure if they like the guy, but I think even the media are realising that, hey, wait a minute, it might not be best to depose a third Prime Minister.
It wasn't best to depose Boris and it wasn't best to depose Liz.
I don't really buy in. I mean, with Liz Truss, I think that she's been vindicated, actually, especially with regards to the IMF forecasts that have come out recently.
But the media aren't talking about that?
Yeah, the media aren't talking about that because they were actually responsible for all of the chaos that ensued because markets are indeed affected by the furore. That's the
all
furore
of that money
that's
which
created
we've
in the media.
made back, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. However, when it comes to the idea of, if it was Boris Johnson, then, we'd probably be in a better situation.
They would not be at 21% in the polls, Dominic.
But these problems are inevitable because it's been a build-up from the economic fallout following the pandemic, which Boris Johnson presided over as Prime Minister.
But don't you think Boris...
These were inevitable problems.
No, he offered hope. And he offered hope of tax cuts.
Hope in what sense?
Well,
I mean,
I think he would not have stuck to this high tax agenda. I think he understood. He's actually said now in his Carlton Club speech that he believes the Tories need to cut.
Yeah, but when he was Prime Minister, right, he was, obviously listening to Liz, he was hinting at that he wanted tax cuts. But that's all he was really doing. I mean, Rishi Sunak, he could have still said, hey, either cut taxes or resign, and that never happened.
But maybe he was aware of what the financial establishment was planning to do to him, because look at what they did to Liz Truss.
Well, then say that then. I mean, leaders like Donald Trump, for example, if there was something like that happening and he was suspicious of it, he would bloody say it. He'd be called a conspiracy theorist, but whatever.
Well, I think Liz Truss has been proven right.
Yeah, I admit, I think she has.
Forces and globalist forces that were out to stop her low tax agenda and her growth agenda.
Because that's not part of the plan.
It's not part of the plan. Exactly. Amy Nicole, I mean, this must be great for you, right? This is great for you because Rishi Sunak's a total disaster electorally and at the polls, and you know that if the Tories depose Rishi Sunak, they become an international laughingstock. So it's sort of, for you on the left, this is a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also made me laugh when you talked about potentially finding another leader, as if you're going to go over to the dirty washing basket and scrabble around for the thing that stinks the least.
Well, no. By the way, it wouldn't be another leader. It would be Boris Johnson, who was democratically elected in a landslide.
The thing is, Boris Johnson...
At the last election.
Boris Johnson has caused more harm to this country than possibly any other Prime Minister with what he did with Brexit. And
more harm than Neville Chamberlain.
I'm sorry, but Boris's Brexit deal has harmed the country irreversibly.
That simply isn't true. You look at the last crash under Gordon Brown when he said he'd abolish boom and bust. The country took a serious nosedive.
How long can we keep doing this, though? This rigmarole about Labour, about Gordon Brown. How long?
Can we just address Dominique's point? Because I think you're the best person to do it. You were a major Boris Johnson supporter. Would you be a Boris Johnson supporter again? And do you believe, like Lord Lister, because Lord Lister was heavily hinting this morning that Boris needs to return. Do you agree?
What Lord Lister was talking about is who can win an election. And like it or not, Boris had a record majority.
Oh,
you
think Boris could beat Starmer? I honestly think that Boris would be able to win an election.
I remember when Boris was PM, one of my Labour colleagues said to me, Starmer can never beat Boris, and that's why we're going to get rid of him.
I'm sorry to say, everyone, yes, he can, right? Because the Tories...
You must admit that Boris has a much better chance of winning the next election.
Even if, maybe marginally, but he's really is hated in this country.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm sorry, conservative and left-wing. A lot of people really hate Boris.
A lot of people love him.
They think his campaign for World War III, telling us to turn our lights off for Ukraine, claiming that Putin said he was going to kill him. A lot of people think he's really quite dangerous right now.
Be that as it may, Rishi can still get this done. He just
Oh,
needs
come
to
on.
fix
He's
all
an
of these
absolute
problems.
non-event, and you can spray the
he'd
lot
have
of them.
to double his current poll rate. And let's
That's
hope he can do it. Let's see him
deluded.
do it.
Let's face it, you're on the Titanic and all the lifeboats have gone, and now all you can do is cling on.
Well, how horrible. How
I'm sorry.
horrible that you think that's a great...
Reality can be very
That's a
horrible.
great joke. How horrible.
Your party's a joke.
Bad for the country. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, thank you so much. My superstar panel are here all night. But still to come is that bombshell bath photo that has stunned royal circles. Reason enough for Prince Andrew to launch a comeback. My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, give their expert insight on this and the latest on Harry and Meghan at 9:35. But up next, in The Clash, as 500,000 listeners dump Radio 2 for golden oldie stations, has the BBC's diversity drive and its blatantly ageist policies ruined the once great station? BBC legends Mike Reid, Liz Kershaw and Martin Bell do battle straight after the break. But I want to know what you think on this. It's a hot button issue today. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle at gbnews. Our poll running there too. You can vote right now, and we're back in just a few minutes.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this
you
morning.
even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. Do you have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for The Clash.
And today we were giving damning proof that the British Bashing Corporation's ageist and diversity-driven purge of its golden oldies on Radio 2 just isn't working. In fact, it's killing off the station. Official figures revealed that a staggering 580,000 listeners have switched off after the departures of Vanessa Feltz, Paul O'Grady, Simon Mayo, Steve Wright and most recently Ken Bruce, who was a fixture on the station for 31 years. Now, these veteran broadcasters have been replaced by the more woke and diverse crowd of Scott Mills, Michelle Visage, Rylan and DJ Spoonie. It seems the diversity-obsessed bosses need to wake up to their declining audiences before they're sort of broadcasting into the abyss. What do you think? Has the BBC's ill-judged diversity drive and ageist policies driven away 500,000 viewers and ruined Radio 2? Let me know your thoughts. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. Those results coming shortly. But joining me now on this, former BBC war correspondent and MP Martin Bell, Britain's second longest-serving female national radio DJ until the BBC cruelly axed her, but we're glad to have her part of the GB News family now, Liz Kershaw, and the legendary former Radio 1 DJ and star Top of the Pops presenter, Mike Reid. So look, Liz Kershaw, let me start with you because actually you were a victim of what I believe is now an ageist policy which has infiltrated BBC Radio, especially Radio 2. What do you think of these radars?
As soon as I started nudging 60, I got nervous. And, I was called in and I was retired shortly after turning 62, just as Janice Long was before
And Vanessa
me.
Feltz. And Vanessa Feltz too.
Feltz, as soon as she touched 60, she was out. And she said on this morning, the ITV programme Live the other morning, after the announcement about Ken Bruce, that yes, she'd sensed ageism, as I did. You know, it's sort of very subtle, but you get to feel like, oh, Liz, you're an old fogey, you know, you've no authority, you've no credibility. And it's very uncomfortable. So, yeah, I definitely looked at the figures, the radar figures this morning and thought, wow.
Because Mike Reid... Yeah, Mike Reid, what I find so disgraceful about this is that the BBC management don't seem to care about their massive group, the millions and millions of older folk who love Radio 2. Remember, the BBC have now forced over 75s to start paying the licence fee. But what, they don't believe that there should be presenters who they love? They're getting rid of music from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s on Radio 2, and they're moving much more towards music from the 90s and the noughties. Like, what's going on, Mike?
Well, that's a bit like taking books out of a library and saying you can't take anything out from the 40s, 50s, 60s or before that, including Shakespeare or the Bible.
Exactly. No Beatles,
You can only have the modern stuff. So it is a bit like that. There's always been a natural cult. When Jimmy Young went, they said it'll never be the same. When Wogan went, it'll never be the same. So there is an element of that. And more stations, of course, now. There are more and more stations. But, yeah, the music is great. And the presenters, you know, like Liz is saying, you don't stop being good. You don't stop being passionate at whatever it is, whether it's music, whether it's carpentry, whether it's shipbuilding. You don't stop being good and you don't stop having a passion.
No, indeed. And Martin Bell, surely you must see that there is now... I mean, I know you are a big defender of the BBC, but surely you must see that there is now a trend that virtually every older presenter on BBC Radio, especially Radio 2, ends up being forced out.
Then surely you must see that you have a commercial interest in rubbishing the BBC. You do it every week for one reason or another. There comes a time in a broadcasting career when you have to move on. I certainly did. If you're in television, somebody will come and say, look, you got a face for radio. And if in radio, you can last a little bit longer. But this has been... Jimmy Young was a case in point. He left at 80 and there was a national outcry. Believe me, the BBC's figures are going to recover. The BBC has a reach and a popularity and a reputation which...
Liz is shaking her head.
GB News cannot begin to match.
Liz is shaking her head. Liz, you come in.
Martin, I'm as passionate about the BBC as you are. I've spent 35 years on national radio, and before that on local radio. I believe in the BBC as a national broadcaster. But there are so many things wrong, and if people don't speak out about it, then they're not doing the job, as you've done in your career, speaking up and even standing as an MP against corruption. Well, I've been banging on since 1987 about equality in the BBC, because when I joined Radio 1, as Mike will know, there were 25 male DJs, and I was only the third in its 20-year history. It took the BBC 16 years to recruit its second woman, Janice Long. For the first 16 years, there was only Anne Nightingale for 2 hours on a Sunday. And that continued throughout my career until I wrote a report and questions were asked in the House of Commons, and Tony Hall declared that 50% of presenters must be female. Why is that important? Because nobody should be excluded from a job they're perfectly capable of doing on the grounds of sex, race, age, whatever. It should be, if you're good at it, you shouldn't. You see, they used to say things like, at Radio 1, they used to say, we can't have women on daytime Radio 1 because most of the listeners are female and they want the company of a man. You can't operate a desk, Liz, somebody said to me. You're just not biologically wired to operate a studio. I had to put up with all that crap for all those years. And only latterly have we had equality in the numbers of women. And we've now got women on daytime radio too. So the next thing was that they recruited June Sarpong as the diversity czar, £180,000 a year for 3 hours a week. And they would then issued this diktat that 20% of on-air people, whether they were presenters or guests, had to be non-white. And managers would not get promoted or their bonuses unless they achieved those targets. And that is what is going on now. Now, I think it's a good thing, because there was a time when the only black faces you saw at the BBC were the commissionaires on the desk. And once you went into the building, and Martin, you will know this is true, you did not see a black producer or a black presenter. So things have improved, times have changed, and that's for the better. And I completely agree with that. I think what's wrong is when perfectly good presenters who are popular with the people who are paying the tax, the licence fee, are retired.
Well, indeed. And Liz, you've made so many fascinating points there. But one I just want to pick up with Mike Reed is the issue is, Mike, young people don't actually really want to listen to a traditional linear radio station, right? They're the streaming generation. They've got Spotify, they've got podcasts. They do self-curation. So actually what the BBC is doing is a bit delusional anyway. They're chasing this young audience that doesn't actually want them anymore, rather than focusing on the millions and millions of people who love Radio 2 and happen to be in their 60s and their 70s.
Yeah, you're quite right. That's why what I do is working, and I do the Heritage Chart, and it goes out around the world on TV, enormously popular for the heritage artists who are still making the best music they've made in their lives, but being ignored by people like Radio 2. So that is a problem. Yeah, a book came out a couple of years ago about why are BBC hemorrhaging young people. And I said, it's not just the BBC. Generally, every platform, younger people are looking and operating in a different way now. Because you're not going to woo them back by playing young music. It's like BBC local radio. You can play much younger music, but you're not going to woo them back. So there's this thing, when I listen to local BBC radio, which has always been very, very good, they're playing much younger music to a much older demographic. And the two don't quite sit somehow.
Martin Bell, why should, in this climate, the BBC continue to own and run Radio 1 and Radio 2? Surely it's time for them to be sold off.
Because the BBC is the national broadcaster. It is looked up to through the world. It has just celebrated and marked 100 years of achievement unmatched by any other broadcaster in the world. We should value it, we should cherish it, by all means reform it, but we must not let it go.
And keep older DJs on air?
Up to a certain point. There comes a time when you reach a certain age. I certainly did. In my case,
what about Liz? I mean, look, she's just given the most eloquent, beautiful, impassioned defence of the BBC, and she's not allowed on because she's 63.
Well, I'm hardly on myself, but You know, we know where comes a time you'll let go. You learn to live with it and move on.
Liz, you're too old, according to Martin. Too old for the
No,
Bee.
she's not.
I have moved on, and I'm having the time of my life. But what I think is wrong is that it's about the music, and it's about experience and knowledge. And I took the trouble when I was writing an article about this for a newspaper 2 weeks ago to go through all the playlists of Radio 1, 2, 1 Extra, the Asian Network, 6 Music, and you won't believe now the overlap between Radio 1, 2 and 6. And they were supposed to be distinct.
They're chasing the youth. They are chasing the youth, and mark my words, they're ruining Radio 2. They're ruining Radio 2, the nation's best-loved station. But look, fascinating debate. Thank you so much. One of Britain's best-loved DJs there, Liz Kershaw, the former BBC war correspondent and MP, Martin Bell, and the legendary Radio 1 DJ and Top of the Pops presenter, Mike Reid. But who do you agree with? Has the BBC's ill-judged diversity drive and ageist policies ruined Radio 2? Well, Michael on Twitter says the BBC misjudged quite a lot of things, it would seem. Yeah, they do. From Jabby, I was an avid listener for 35 years. The decline began with the departure of Dare Terry, Wogan, of course. Just awful now. Boom and Greatest Hits rule. These are the 2 new entrants to the market. Ken Bruce, going to one of them, of course. And from Howard, I think it is important to change presenters from time to time to keep it current. Your verdict is now in. Wow, this one's overwhelming. 95% of you agree that the BBC's ill-judged diversity drive and ageist policies has ruined Radio 2. Just 5% of you say they haven't. Coming up, should the King tell Prince Harry to stay away from his historic coronation? Arch-royalist Anne Widdecombe delivers a powerful warning to the King about inviting the Sussexes at 9:45. But first, does that bombshell bath photo that stunned royal circles give Prince Andrew an opportunity to make a comeback? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, give their expert take live straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue,
Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Now, the campaign to rehabilitate Prince Andrew has stepped into overdrive after the family of Ghislaine Maxwell clamoured to his defence. 2 decades ago, in a bathtub in Maxwell's London home, Andrew is alleged to have had sexual activity with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre. However, Maxwell's brother has released this image, which he says discredits the claim because the bath is too small for 2 people. Elsewhere, in an exclusive report in the Independent newspaper, it's revealed the late Queen suggested her beloved son Andrew should devote himself to charitable work as a route back to public life. Well, previously, Our Lady C has been a defender of Prince Andrew. Lady C, do you still think the Duke of York should still be launching a comeback?
In all honesty, I think no, he shouldn't. I think, as you know, he's innocent. I think he's been unfairly pilloried. But I honestly think that he ought to understand that his reputation has been irretrievably damaged, whether or not he had any congress with that girl because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And that is the real sticking point. And I agree with the late Queen. He should dedicate himself in a profumo style way to doing good works behind the scenes. The problem with that, where Andrew is concerned, is his great accomplishment was always doing work with trade and, you know, things like Pitch at the Palace, which rarely requires a high enough profile to be successful. So I get his frustration, but he needs to understand that his reputation is irretrievably sullied because of his association with Jeffrey Epstein. And to an extent, it's unfair because there are many people who were much more closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein whose reputations have not been damaged.
Bill Gates, Bill Clinton.
That's right. Bill Gates is another one, although he lost his marriage.
Yes, he did. He did. The less said about that, maybe the better tonight. But Phil Dampier, I know that you say that Andrew, and you know, I always say this, but you are the journalist who knows Prince Andrew the best. You have broken story after story on the guy for decades now. And you say one of the issues, I believe, is that he's having trouble finding a charity that actually wants to work with him. But the reason that I think that still has some issues, Phil, is that, you know, we've had 3 years while this has all been going on. We were all locked down during the pandemic. Nothing was stopping him going to work in a food bank 5 days a week for 8 hours. He could have just gone and done it. He didn't need to be a big signing to a charity. Just go and get your hands dirty, mate. Go and do some work. And I really do think the public would have respected that, but he hasn't done it.
And what he doesn't want to do, Dan, is have any more of these stunts. I mean, I couldn't actually believe my eyes when I saw that picture on the front of the Daily Telegraph. We were talking last week about a silver bullet, weren't we? I wasn't expecting to be staring at a silver bath tap. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous. that's not done him any favours. And also, of course, news that the picture's been earmarked as genuine. So I think he's on a sticky wicket. But Lady C is absolutely right. The problem is that no charity will have him at the moment. So he really has got a problem. And Pitchett Palace, in fact, hasn't actually been shut down yet. So I think the danger is if he doesn't get involved in the charity, he might start to get involved in a few dodgy deals, and that could lead to all sorts of problems. So it's a difficult one for him.
Now, look, big development in the Sussex saga in the past 24 hours. As we know, the mourners of Montecito absolutely furious that their children Archie and Lilibet have not yet been granted royal titles. But according to this bombshell new report in Vanity Fair, a royal source has revealed the matter of titles is still up in the air. The feeling is that the titles need to be earned. The royals need to know that they can trust Harry and Meghan not to keep damaging the reputation of the family. So, Lady C, this sounds promising to me. It sounds like a bit more of a sort of tough love approach from King Charles. Do you think that's right?
Well, I actually don't for a second think that the king is going to be giving those children princely rank or the right to use princely rank. First of all, they don't live here. Can you imagine Prince Archie and Princess Lily swanning around, offering everybody avocados on the pot farm in California? Somehow I don't think that's going to fly very well with the British public or the Commonwealth. So I think right there it's problematic. And also, there are other issues involved with those children having titles, which are very contentious matters and have not been resolved. So I think, for all sorts of reasons, it doesn't make sense for them to hope that those children will be given any title whatsoever. And I think it's ridiculous of them to keep on pushing for this, because let's remember, the Wessex children are just at the moment Lord and Lady, although Prince Edward and Sophie have done wonderful work over the decades. And in fact, those children, in my opinion, should be made to step up to the plate and perform royal duties. So I think if you compare those two situations, you will see that Harry and Meghan are yet again totally deluded.
Interesting. Fascinating insight there, Phil. What do you think? Is King Charles finally starting to realise he can't give in yet again to Harry and Meghan, especially over these titles?
I think these titles are one of the few weapons he's got, Dan, aren't they?
Yeah.
He's got to fight back with something. He's got to have some sort of club behind his back. We have to remember at the end of the day that he wants to have a relationship with his grandchildren. He must be desperately sad not to see them. I'm sure he'd like to make the peace, but he's got to have something to fight back with, and that is one of the things that he can hold over Harry and Meghan, who, after all, are holding things over him with their books and TV shows. So it's a bit of a trade-off at the moment.
Lady C, do you get any sense that King Charles is realising that and I don't use this word lightly, the danger that Harry and Meghan cause if they are allowed to get all of these concessions from the royal family? I mean, he's trusting Justin Welby to do the negotiations. I mean, Justin Welby, I call him woke Welby, Lady C, and he's totally in the camp of Harry and Meghan. He thinks Meghan's a humanitarian.
Yes, well, and let's remember the pig airline that you have to book tickets on, because flying pigs come from Montecito first class every single day of the week. No, I think the king he's a lot more aware, and I think he's a lot more decisive, and I think he's a lot less wishy-washy than the public are aware of. And I think he's very alert to the dangers, but it's a very complex situation because, the possibility is that Harry has been brain damaged. And, he's dealing with a very complex set of circumstances.
What do you mean by that, Lady C?
Well, Diana was bulimic when she was pregnant with Harry. And there are studies that have been done on the effects of bulimia upon fetuses.
Yes,
So
although
there
he
has-
has been very open about his own mental health problems, I guess we can't diagnose him on air.
No, we're not trying to diagnose him. We're just making the point that this is a possibility and that the king has to factor it into the equation.
Well, I do remember Thomas Markle on this show before his stroke, bless him, saying that he thought Harry may have been dropped on his head as a baby because he was saying such idiotic things. I think that was a joke, though. I think he was making a joke. Lady Colin Campbell, Phil Dampier, our royal masterminds, absolutely brilliant to speak to you as ever, and they will be back next week. But coming up, as a bombshell poll reveals nearly 3/4 of Brits have lost faith in the PM, how can Rishi save his job and the country from a socialist coalition from hell? My panel debate that in the Media Buzz after 10. But first, does the King need to tell Prince Harry not to come to his historic coronation? Arch-Royalist Anne Widdecombe has a really fascinating take on this. She's going to reveal all straight after the break.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Time now for The Outsider. We are officially just 93 days out from Charles III's historic coronation. But there's only one issue still casting a long shadow over the momentous occasion, whether Harry and Meghan turn up. And while the King continues to take the high ground by graciously and perhaps foolishly offering numerous olive branches to the vindictive couple, Arch-Royalist and former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe has a stark warning tonight for Charles about the reportedly growing prospect of an invitation to his youngest son and his wife. So, Anne, you think Charles needs to take action this week. What do you think the King needs to do?
I think he needs to tell his son to stay away from the coronation. I think he needs to do it this week because the longer he delays, the more that story then overshadows the coronation. You've rightly pointed out, we've only got about 90 days left. We need to get these issues resolved now so that the world can then focus on the coronation, not on this wretched man. But as I've pointed out in my article in the Express, every Wednesday, by the way, as I pointed out this week, Harry cannot be photographed by the press if he's not there to be photographed. He can't be booed by the public if he's not there to be booed. He can't rat on private conversations if those conversations have never taken place. And you can't have panning shots of, say, him and Camilla or some other such combination if he's not there. And if he is there, he will be the story. If he is not there, that is the end of it. And we can all focus on the coronation. Now, I understand, this is the King's son. Of course he wants him there. But I'm afraid Charles has got to put duty first. And this week, this very week, he's simply got to bite the bullet and say to Harry, sorry, but in the present climate, you cannot come.
I think that's very sage advice, Anne, because lots of sources close to King Charles are briefing this idea that if Harry and Meghan are not at the coronation, their non-attendance will overshadow proceedings. But I think you're completely right. That's not true. If they're not there, it will be a huge story when it's announced that they're not going to turn up. But actually, it means at the coronation, we're not thinking, oh, my goodness, is William going to lamp Harry? Are Meghan and Kate going to have some sort of stare-off behind the scenes? We won't be given that opportunity. We will just be given the opportunity to focus on the King.
And, of course, if Harry's there, the whole royal family are going to be uncomfortable. They're not going to know which way to look. They're going to have to be thinking about the expressions on their faces the entire time. And now none of that happens if Harry's not there. And, yes, there will be a huge furore when it's announced. That's the reason why I say it's got to be announced now, soon, tomorrow, yesterday, so that we can then
get it out
that
the way. Get it out the way.
Get it out of the way.
But
get it out of the way.
Look, there's so many issues with this, and the thing is, I've always suspected Harry and Meghan will turn up regardless. They are trying to leverage off the fact that they're not confirming they're coming to try and get concessions from Charles and the monarchy, which I just think is ludicrous. But I am genuinely concerned, Anne, about William and Kate and Camilla in particular, and them being put through the indignity of having to face Harry and Meghan in public. Because what you've got to remember, Anne, is after the late Queen's funeral, before the funeral, they weren't aware of what Harry was going to publish in his book and what Meghan was going to say on the Netflix series. Now, they know what's been said. They know that Harry has described Camilla as dangerous and the villain. They know that Harry and Meghan have implied that Kate was rude when the Duchess of Sussex entered the royal family. And, look at what he said about his brother. He has portrayed his brother as some sort of bullying brute. And by all accounts, I think William's anger is off the scale. And who knows? He might not be able to control it. He might not even be able to shake his brother's hand. I'm not going to say he's going to do anything in public, but it could be a very awkward moment, Anne.
Well, it could be, but what I think is a massive cheek is that Harry is talking about negotiating at all. He announces in the course of that rather passive interview that he had, when he was hardly challenged, well, there'll be a negotiation when they apologise. Well, the royal family should not apologise, because the instant then there's any talk of a negotiation, all the emphasis will be, well, have they apologised, Have they said sorry to Meghan? Have they done this? Have they done that? There should be no negotiation. Reconciliations don't come about through negotiation. They come about because there's a genuine will on both sides to say, look, let's try and put this behind us. It is far too early for that, given they've still got books to come. They've still got podcasts to come.
And there's Meghan's autobiography to come.
I'm sorry, the King got to get a backbone over this.
Very good advice from Anne Whittaker. And thank you. We will speak next week. But coming up, what do the Tories need to do to ensure election victory? Former Brexit Secretary David Davis joins me live to rate Rishi's rocky premiership and outline his battle plan for election triumph at 10:15. But next, are Labour's plans to ensure black-led businesses access lucrative government contracts a dangerous act of social engineering? My superstar panel will return to debate that in the media buzz. And we're going to have the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. That's straight after the break.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, after celebrating 3 glorious years of Brexit earlier in the week, forgive me if I'm not popping the champagne for 100 days of Fishy Rishi inside number 10.
Here, I obviously regret appointing someone who has had to resign in these circumstances.
You were filmed earlier without a seatbelt on, Prime Minister, in your car. Would you address that for?
There's a bombshell. New poll finds that 72% of Brits think he will be ousted at the next election. Should the Conservatives dump Sunak now to avoid a socialist coalition from hell? Tory grandee and former Brexit Secretary David Davis speaks out for his beloved party at 10:15. Why are the Welsh Rugby Union banning this iconic anthem? It's a Tom Jones classic, right? So why have the wokies decided it's terribly offensive? Our Out of the People, Charlie Lawson, takes down the woke week in Uncancelled at 10:40. As Labour plans to ensure black-led businesses access lucrative government contracts, is the scheme a dangerous act of social engineering? I'll debate Slippery Starmer's latest foray into toxic identity politics with my superstar panel next. Tonight, I'm joined by Dominique Samuels, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole. Can you believe that this Commonwealth-hating historian and Harry and Meghan mouthpiece has accepted an order of the British Empire?
This fairy tale is embedding itself in a nation that is having a pretty toxic debate about the European Union.
So why do lefties like David Olusoga there and Alan Cumming take honours when they clearly hate our country's heritage? Plus, after popular kids' game, The Sims introduces trans mastectomy scars and chest binders for child characters. Have computer games become a Trojan horse for dangerous woke propaganda? We'll explore both of those stories in the media buzz. And Ron DeSantis is striving for the White House, but will he get my vote when I crown today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass at 10:50? We're going to have first front pages in mere moments too, right after the news headlines at 10. All you need to know with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story, the Bank of England has raised its base rate from 3.5% to 4% today. That's the 10th increase in a row, but inflation is beginning to fall. The bank also says the UK is set to enter recession this year, but stresses the economic downturn could be shorter and much less severe than previously expected. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, supported the Bank of England's decision.
We recognise it is very difficult for families, businesses up and down the country when interest rates go up, but much harder for them would be if we didn't take decisive steps to bring down inflation, and that's why the Bank of England is absolutely right to do what they've done today, and we in the government must make sure we support them by what I do in the budget to make sure that we make it easier, not harder, for them to do what we all want to do, which is to halve inflation.
Meanwhile, the Business Secretary is urging energy companies to suspend the outrageous practice, as it calls it, of forcibly installing prepayment meters. Earlier, Ofgem announced it was launching an urgent investigation into British Gas after reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing the prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. The boss of British Gas owner Centrica says he's horrified to hear about it, and the Energy and Climate Minister Graham Stewart has said it's appalling.
I brought in all the suppliers last week to talk about how we better look after vulnerable people, because there are clear rules and they have obviously not been followed, and therefore I need the regulator and I need the companies to do the right thing by people who are in the most difficult of circumstances and have been treated on this evidence appallingly.
Lancashire Police say they've now located and are speaking with a potential new witness they were looking for in the search for Nicola Bulley. Earlier today, they'd released an image of the woman they wanted to speak to, who was seen in the area where the mother of two disappeared. The 45-year-old mother of two went missing last Friday in St Michael's-on-Wyre whilst walking her pet dog. As part of the hunt, divers are still searching the river. Rail passengers will face disruption tomorrow as fresh strikes by train drivers cause travel problems all over the country. RMT and ASLEF union members will walk out in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Rail operators are warning of disruption to services all day and little to no services in some parts of the country. And lastly, the Princess of Wales has been filming a video to promote her campaign for positivity in early life with radio and television personality Roman Kemp. Wrapping up against the cold in a sheepskin coat and gloves, Kate chats to Kemp in footage taken in Hertfordshire last month. It's all part of the Princess's Shaping Us campaign, aimed at raising the importance of early years development in children. The film will be released tomorrow. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, part 2 now of Dan Wootton Tonight.
Time for tomorrow's News Tonight now in our Media Buzz. First front pages are in. The Independent carries the first on-the-record accusations of bullying against the Prime Minister. Oh, guess who it's from? Knock me down with a feather. Arch Ramona, Gina Miller, who accuses Raab of calling her stupid and naive in an aggressive encounter at the BBC in 2016. The Deputy PM denies the claim. Oh, come on. Come on. Calling someone naive. I mean, I'm going to say, Amy Nicole, I call you stupid and naive most weeks. You're going to have me in a few years. You're going to have me. The Metro leads with the news that British gas debt agents are breaking into the homes of the vulnerable to fit payment meters, while energy giant Shell has recorded record profits as consumers struggle with bills. So my superstar panel are back with me, the aforementioned. She is not stupid. She is a little bit naive. Oh, that's Dominique Samples. But I was actually talking about Amy Nicole. Sorry, Dominique. There she is. Former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey with me too. Now, in the latest calamitous polling for the Tories, Labour has maintained a 20-point lead over the government, and current projections have them winning a 250-seat majority at the next election, which is why I think we need to reconsider keeping Fishy Rishi as Prime Minister. But as the terrifying likelihood of a slippery Starmer victory grows, the true horror of his socialist agenda is becoming clear. Labour's Race Equality Task Force, led by Baroness Doreen Lawrence, reportedly intends to give black-led businesses more support to secure lucrative government contracts. A number of Labour front benchers and legal experts are also said to be exploring ways to deliver a new Race Equality Act. The task force's co-chair, Annalise Dodds, the very white Annalise Dodds, said Labour will make tackling structural racism and inequality a key mission in government by introducing a Race Equality Act to deliver security, prosperity and respect for everyone in this country. But aren't policies like this just divisive and even discriminatory against other businesses? Dominique Samuel.
This is the sort of dangerous rhetoric that left-wing ideologues always steer towards. They always steer towards we need to discriminate against other racial groups in order to make one specific racial group happy, bearing in mind that black people make up, over 3% of the population. Yet everywhere we turn, these diversity drives are geared towards black people. And I think that's because the Asian ethnic group, it's a bit uncomfortable because specifically for Chinese and Indians, economically, they do very, very well in this country. Some studies show there was a ethnicity pay review done in 2019 that showed that Chinese employees and Indian employees actually earned more than white people. And the thing is, when you actually delve into the reality, is that pay, ethnicity, and all of these different things, there are a range of different factors that affect why maybe businesses and black employees don't do as well as white ones. It's to do with age, it's to do with occupation, it's to do with qualifications, it's to do with where you live. This will be dangerous and divisive, but I fear that is what the ideologues within Labour actually want to push. It's division, unfortunately.
Because Amy Nicole, remember, after the whole Black Lives Matter movement, the government commissioned a huge report to look into whether the UK was institutionally racist by the absolutely brilliant Tony Sewell and with a panel of brilliant ethnically diverse people, and it found conclusively that the UK is not institutionally racist. So what's Annalise Dodds talking about and what are Labour trying to do?
That's true, but then also the Sewell report was widely condemned by a number of voices, including Doreen Lawrence, who we mentioned earlier, who is talking about this...
Why, because they're in the racial grievance industry then?
Well,
because
are
surely
they?
you would celebrate the Sewell.
I think it's a...
Because the Sewell report didn't say there weren't inequalities, but why would you condemn a report that says Britain is not?
I think denying institutional racism by this stage is considered a fact.
Where's the proof?
By a lot of people. I think the proof is in the figures. So a black person has double the chance of being unemployed in the UK. A black mother is 4 times more likely to die in childbirth in the UK. These are facts, so you can't really...
No, but you're pulling out individual cherry-picked
divisive
facts. But there are also lots of facts about white working class
this, or is it more realistic to admit this? It's not a binary of race or socioeconomic class. It's all those things combined. So this is looking at race, and that is part of this. So where's the problem?
Well, I'll tell you what the problem is.
I'll tell you where the problem is.
It's divisive policy. Will you come in?
I'll tell you where the problem is. They didn't express it as a basket of things. They just said about black people. You could imagine how someone like me might enjoy the idea that, black businesses are going to get extra support, and maybe they should do. I could see how black business should be supported, but the conversation should be about how we're going to support them, not who we're going to exclude. Because the problem is you can get to a point where you've generated so much animosity, things that are beyond the government's control, then turn their nose against black business.
Hang on a minute.
Gay businesses,
can I
trans
say?
businesses,
Right, so
female-led businesses. This is lunacy.
And we're also focusing on one tiny cohort of black people as majority. It's not the working class, independent black business owners or just the average working class black person that just wants to get by that's going to be scoring government contracts. It's going to be people that are already quite well off anyway, reaping the benefits of this grievance industry.
you don't know for sure. But what we do know for sure
it's not going to be
is that currently no black businesses have any government contracts. And wouldn't you prefer this than the current state, where the Tories discriminate?
Well, hold on a second.
Hang on, let me finish the sentence. Discriminate against anyone who isn't friends with a Tory. Look at the. When you talk about
Amy, disgraceful.
Hang on, let me finish it. Currently, you talk about waste and corruption, the potential for waste and corruption. We're living waste and corruption right now.
That's disgraceful.
Look at the PPE contracts. That was disgraceful.
And PPE came from Labour. Let's be clear about that. And the second thing is this. If we are so bad at dealing with black businesses, it didn't happen today. It would have started under the Labour government. The point is this. If you're going to help anybody, black, gay, straight, white, whatever, you have to go for the broadest universal thing and not talk about people...
And a Tory VIP lane, is that?
This is the politics of division, and this is what we're going to get a lot of from Labour. And I actually think that this policy approach has been undercovered by the rest of the media. Now, months after adding they, them pronouns, the children's computer game franchise The Sims has now brought in more highly controversial trans content for teens, including scars showing the effects of breast removal, known as top surgery, and chest binders to suppress breasts. Take a look at one review.
Finally happened. The Sims 4 has added binders and top surgery scars into The Sims. Oh my gosh, but I love seeing the scars in here with this shirt. What a good choice. So this one's not a functional binder, as we can see. It doesn't actually flatten the chest of the Sim wearing it. I'm a bit disappointed. So this would be the shapewear, which makes complete sense.
Sims already has a low age rating of 12 years, but we all know even younger kids play these games, so no wonder many believe this is not entertainment, but a Trojan horse promoting dangerous transgender surgery to vulnerable youngsters. Now, the game's publisher, Electronic Arts, didn't reply to our request for comment, but what do you make of this, Dominique?
I think there's no other way around this. There is a mass indoctrination of children at the moment, pushing this dangerous gender ideology on them. Why would a 12-year-old need to make a sim with a chest binder on it? It literally makes no sense. Most kids won't really understand what this means. They'll think it's cool, and then what do you see? It follows on into real life with kids claiming that they were born in the wrong body. And unfortunately, our culture at the moment encourages this and actually says, no, let's not ask any questions. Let's give you hormones, and after that, let's arrange a surgery, and it's vile.
Amy, what do you make of The Sims doing?
I think that at the moment, America has a very different relationship with this whole subject than we do, and it's very extreme. And it can be what we've just seen.
Do you even think that's too much?
I'm not.
Amy, yes, you are uncomfortable with that.
Yes.
Right.
I was a little bit uncomfortable with that, but I also am uncomfortable.
Shawnee, you uncomfortable?
But can I just say I'm also uncomfortable with Dominique saying, "Oh, we just let kids do whatever they want" and all this, because that's not true either.
Okay.
Shawnee, you uncomfortable?
I just think we've gone down the route of sexualising our children far too young.
That's not sexy.
Far too early, and we just push these things to them when actually they wouldn't be paying attention to these things if we weren't putting it on their agenda. And I think the thing we need to do with our children is just give them space to be children.
Yeah, and indeed. I think these corporates just need to stay out of it. These woke, virtue-signaling
what do they have to gain?
Just keep out of it. Keep out of it. Dominic Samuel, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole. Stand by, because coming up, well, actually, I think we've just spoken about that, about Labour's black businesses. But what we're going to talk about next, though, is Fishy Rishi Sunak brings up 100 days in number 10. A bombshell new poll in The Times has revealed that almost 3/4 of Brits have no faith in the PM. So should the Conservatives dump Sunak to avoid a socialist coalition from hell? Tory grandee and former Brexit Secretary David Davis speaks out for his beloved party. He's live with me straight after the break.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, the Conservative Party marked 2 milestones, one more momentous than the other this week. Rishi Sunak has today officially survived 100 days in office, while on Tuesday, Britain celebrated Brexit Day and 3 years of independence from the EU. But a bombshell new poll suggests there won't be much reason for celebration inside number 10 tonight. According to Times research, 72% of Brits don't think Sunak will survive past the next election. So, is there any way the Tories can turn their luck around and win in 2024? Well, joining me now is former Brexit Secretary David Davis. David, great to have you. Look, you didn't support Sunak initially. You backed Penny Mordaunt, but then once she was out, you very quickly believed that Sunak was the man to lead the country. I have my doubts. What am I getting wrong? What am I not seeing? Because I'm just finding it really hard to see how he wins. And I think he needs to win. You know, the Tories need to win for the good of the country to stop this coalition from hell, Starmer, Sturgeon and the like. But you know, he's not making any headway, David.
Well, you're trying to read a compass in the middle of a hurricane. That's what's going on at the moment. You've got the strikes, of course. You've got the economic problems. You've got just had the Sahawi issue, the scandal, whatever you call it. You've still got the Channel boats. You've got the economics. You've got the National Health Service issues. All of these are inherited issues. They've come to a peak now together, but they're all basically things he's got from his predecessors. I mean, the economic issues made worse by Truss. You've got many of the other issues, direct inheritance from Boris. So I'm not surprised that people are losing faith's the wrong word. They just can't see a way through it, I think, is what's happening. And the question is one you should perhaps ask me in about three or 6 months' time, because then we'll either be through the strikes or we won't. Then inflation. He says he's going to halve inflation. Well, we'll know by then whether he succeeded at that. We'll see how the budget delivers. We'll see what happens with National Health Service. He's got lots and lots of plans. I mean, he announced, Monday was a classic case in point. He announced a whole series of programs for new ambulances and mental health actions and so on. Nobody can remember a word of that because all of the other noise. That's what I mean by trying to read a compass in a hurricane.
Yes, but he's also said he's going to stop the boats, David, and I struggle to see how he can do that without leaving the ECHR. We know that's what the Home Secretary thinks needs to happen, but Sunak isn't even contemplating doing that.
No, and the Home Secretary, to be blunt with you, hasn't exactly improved the situation. I mean, the hard truth is other countries in Europe have actually dealt with this better than we have. I mean, the classic case is Sweden. Now, Sweden is a sort of social democratic, held up as the most civilized state in the world and so on. You know what they did 2 years ago? They passed a law saying, if you come from a safe country, you're going to be turned around the border. You're not going to sit in an asylum centre or in a hostel or whatever. You're going to be sent straight home. And they did that under the ECHR and under ECJ, which is even tougher than the ECHR. They wrote the laws to deal with it. Why can't we do that? I mean, that's what needs to happen. I mean, I led a group of 50 MPs making that point to Sunak before Christmas. That's what needs to happen. So that won't solve the whole issue. But you know what? I think the British public might have a slightly different view if we basically stop 15,000. I mean, that's not a bad start. The big time, So you got that. On the health service, once the strikes are stabilised, we've got to get the waiting times down. Now, all right, this is an inheritance largely from COVID. There are other reasons too, but that's largely an inheritance from COVID. He's got plans for that. He's one of the reasons I supported him bluntly was because he's very smart. He's a technocrat. He's not my sort of politician. I'm an ideological politician. I believe in ideals, But he's a technocrat. He's very smart to deal with those things. So you got that. On the budget, you see, I supported them at the end of last year. I'm a low-tax Tory. But, the mess that was made of the economy by Truss and Kwarteng meant we had to stabilise it.
But have they not been vindicated by the IMF report this week?
Not remotely. Look, one of the things that would have happened if we continued, according to Patrick Minford, a very good economist who was actually advising Truss.
Very pro-Truss.
Is that great man, is that the interest rates would have gone to not to 4%, which is giving people grief today, but to 7%, which would have meant you'd be having mortgage rates at 10%. So he's had to find his way through. He's inherited all these difficult problems, and he's got to find his way through them.
But on the issue of political communication, though, he's having troubles. And Lord Lister this morning on LBC, and he's a Boris ally, made it very clear. He agreed with you, Rishi is a technocrat, but he just doesn't think, it was very clear, he just doesn't think that Sunak can win a general election when he can't communicate the policies. Now, David, I know that you are staunchly opposed to the idea of a Boris Johnson return, but surely you can see why it's becoming more attractive.
Well, I can see why his own supporters think that. Look, the truth of the matter is that Boris has got 2 months of witness appearances to take place in front of the Privileges Committee. That's not going to help his reputation. He's created dozens of these problems himself. He's got real flaws as a Prime Minister. But even put Boris aside, I'll be frank, if the Tory party seeks to elect somebody else now, between now and general election, if we elected the Messiah himself, if Jesus Christ came and led us, we'd still lose, because we've got to make up our mind and stick by it. And that's what I'm arguing we should do. And if we do that, then Sunak, there's no guarantee. I think the odds are against us. It's probably 3 or 4, even 5 to 1 against us. But if Sunak delivers on, let's say, stopping the Albanians, 15,000. If he delivers on some improvement in health service, it won't fix it, and that's going to take longer than 2 years. If he delivers on getting some growth back, and remember, one of the things that always makes me laugh about the BBC is they treat forecasts like facts.
I know.
It doesn't matter whether it's a COVID forecast or an economic.
Well, they're
forecast.
economically illiterate. Their own report revealed that this week. Their own BBC report revealed they do not know how to report economics, and they're trying to do the country down at the moment. But look, David, I just want to move on because there was this really disturbing report this week where the government admitted, really shockingly, in my view, that the British Army's Information Warfare Unit was monitoring COVID lockdown critics. And you have revealed that you were actually one of the victims of this worrying case of what I believe is government overreach. So how do you feel about being surveilled by the army simply because you spoke out against cruel lockdown policy?
It wasn't just that unit. It wasn't just that unit. I mean, that unit was made a big deal of by the Mail on Sunday, understandably. In fact, in some ways, it's the least problematic. Almost every major department of state, the Home Office, the Foreign Office, DCMS, the Cabinet Office, have all got their own surveillance operations. Now, they were put in place for various reasons. Some were put in place to deal with Russian interference in our democracy. Very sensible. Some were put in place to deal with extremists. Very sensible. But what's happened is they've all been reapplied to prop up the government propaganda on COVID. And what's happened as a result of that is not just me. I mean, there's several other MPs too, but also that we know about. Bear in mind, we had to ask I had to ask on my own behalf to find out. But several other MPs, major journalists, Julia Hartley-Brewer, Peter Hitchens, all being surveilled.
Yeah.
And
Adam Brooks, who's one of the panelists on our show. He was a pub landlord being surveilled by the government. I mean, it's appalling.
But the thing is, I mean, look, the truth is, none of this is. They didn't bug my home. They just looked at what I said in public. But why were they doing it? Presumably, there's an outcome of this. And the question I asked in the House of Commons today of the Cabinet Office was, Peter Hitchens, after in 2020 he was being monitored, suddenly found himself sort of shadow banned. He a word I'd not come across before this week. He appeared on interviews and so on, and all of a sudden nobody was looking at the interviews. Maybe the search engines have changed, or the platforms have changed, or whatever. So did the government go to the platforms and say, deal with this?
And we need to know.
We haven't got an answer yet.
We need to know.
If they did, that's a disgraceful, massively anti-democratic thing. It's a sort of Soviet thing to do. So it's really serious.
No, it is. It is. And we're going to keep on this. So you keep pushing, please, and keep us posted. Great to chat. Former Brexit Secretary David Davis. Thank you so much, David. But coming up in Uncancelled, why are the Welsh Rugby Union banning Tom Jones's iconic Delilah from matches? Our man of the people, Charlie Lawson, takes down the woke week. He's uncancelled soon. But next, in the media buzz, David Olusoga, a Britain and Commonwealth hating professor and Harry and Meghan mouthpiece, has accepted an OBE from King Charles today. So why do left-wing celebs take these honours when they bash our nation? My superstar panel return to debate that, plus more front pages. We're back in a few minutes.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So it's time to return to tomorrow's news tonight. Now, this is the Media Buzz. Straight to the front pages, The Guardian reports that the government is under pressure to rethink its windfall tax on energy companies after Shell reported one of the largest profits in UK corporate history, thanks to the surge in energy prices driven by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Daily Star leads with the shocking news that as people freeze in their homes, gas and oil supplier Shell has announced profits of £32 billion. That's one take on it. The Eye develop on that energy price scandal, with energy firms ordered by regulated Ofgem to stop fitting prepaid meters in Britain's poorest homes. I actually think that is a genuine scandal. The Daily Mail, and this is just such a horrible story, leads with this news that it's a week since the disappearance of Nicola Bulley while out walking in Lancashire. Still no trace of her, and this heartbreaking appeal by the family today. And the Daily Mirror leads with the news that England footballer Mason Greenwood will not face trial over an alleged sex attack. All the charges have been dropped. My superstar panel. Back with you now. Political commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. To liberal hypocrisy news now, there's a lot of it. And a Britain-hating historian who bashed our country in Harry and Meghan's Netflix atrocity accepted an award from King Charles at Windsor Castle yesterday. Professor David Olusoga, who originally was awarded the honour in 2019 by the late Queen, was scathing about the monarchy, the British Empire, and even linked the Sussexes' problems to Brexit and racism. Watch.
This fairy tale is embedding itself in a nation that is having a pretty toxic debate about the European Union. Immigration is at the absolute centre of those debates. And immigration is very often in this country a cipher for race. When I was at school, the only aspect of the whole story of British slavery that I was ever taught was the abolition of slavery. But even when we tell that very selective slice of the history, we miss out a critical aspect. Slavery wasn't just abolished, the slave owners were compensated. It's just another way in which our memory of British slavery has been airbrushed out of Britain's story.
And of course, this is a growing trend among virtue signalling lefties after the Scottish actor Alan Cumming embarrassingly handed back his OBE on his 58th birthday, claiming the so-called evils of the British Empire. The former X-Men star gleefully received his Order of the British Empire in 2009, but taking to Instagram, the US Traitors host, he's a bit of a traitor himself, said the Queen's death and the ensuing conversations about the role of monarchy, and especially the way the British Empire profited at the expense of Indigenous people across the world, really opened my eyes. Sean, this is just rank hypocrisy from virtue signalling lefties, isn't it?
I think what I'd say about an OBE, Order of the British Empire, if you accept that medal in view of, and you view the empire as negative, you need to look at your own integrity there. Don't get me wrong, the medal isn't just about the royals, it's about the empire. The clue's in the title of the medal. So if you have a problem with the empire, you shouldn't be able to accept the medal. I remember, was it Benjamin Zephaniah? He's a poet. He didn't accept it because he did not like the word empire. So he was consistent in his view. So I think I would accept it, but I feel slightly differently about the empire than these people do, because they were really down on the empire. Because I personally think you can show me no nation on the planet that has been a world-striding nation that doesn't have some dubious things in its past. The empire wasn't brilliant in every aspect, but it existed. It's our history, and we need to hold on to history, good and bad.
Yeah, well, John Lennon, of course, famously sent his back in 1966. But the weird thing for me is that this David bloke is literally there on Harry and Meghan's documentary tearing down the empire. Why would you accept it?
Because I think the question is really, why is the king even giving him it?
Oh, I can't believe
why
it. Why
accept it? Because King Charles wants these people to be his mates.
Well, it's just like, why was Ngozi Fulani invited to the palace?
Yeah, but it's clear now, and I think people need to actually wake up to the reality of this. I know everyone wants to be...
King Charles is a big wokey.
Yeah, I know everyone wants to be, you know, pro-monarchy because of the late Queen, which is perfectly understandable, but King Charles wants to be mates with these people. He's not on your side. I don't think he really is that much in love with the old traditional past of the monarchy. He wants to be mates with all these people, and it's going to rub a lot of people up the wrong way because it's getting more blatant. Why give him the award if you didn't agree with with the things that he said? And King Charles probably does. I'm
the
afraid.
Alan Cumming thing made me so angry, Amy. The Alan Cumming thing. Oh.
I think
furious.
I feel like in many ways.
Imagine your reaction. Sorry, I just want to say this, and you can respond now. Imagine your reaction to the late Queen dying being to hate your own country. You've got to be a sad, pathetic little man, Alan Cumming, for that to be your response.
Did you say little man on purpose, then? Did you say sad little man on purpose?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. They didn't tear down anything. No one is doing any Britain hating. Being realistic.
What? Sorry.
Being realistic about our history is also something that King Charles does directly. And
sorry, Alan Cumming isn't being British hating by saying it was the Queen's death and the conversations around the way the British Empire profited at the expense and death of Indigenous people that made him return his OBE.
You can appreciate Britain today whilst acknowledging the past.
Yes, so why does he need to send back the OBE?
Look, Alan Cumming is one person, and I think if he's gone on this... I don't think it's virtue signalling. I think if you learn about things, you can know.
I think he's bored.
I think it is virtue signalling, but let's be clear, he has the right. He has the right to do that. And if he's saying as an adult he's learnt some new things and he changed his mind.
Okay, well, fine. But I also have a right to criticise it.
Yeah,
the point about Professor Olya Soga is... He knows that he hates Britain.
This is so unfair.
He knows that he hates the empire. He knows that he hates the Commonwealth. And yet he still goes and crawls at the knees of King Charles at Windsor Castle and accepts the OBE because he's pathetic and attention-seeking, right, Dominique?
That is, whether, no matter which way you look at it, that is complete hypocrisy, because throughout the documentary, he was making links between empire and the royal family and linking it to race, talking about Brexit.
So put your money where your mouth is and turn down the OBE. By the way, he didn't respond.
The current royal family have acknowledged the impact of colonisation.
Because they want to be down with the...
But how can you criticise... So David, the historian, takes the OBE from people who also share his sentiment that colonisation was overwhelmingly abhorrent.
Final word, Sean. Final word, Sean. He's an expert, and this medal is about... Hold on. Yeah, he's an expert in this field. He made that quite clear. This medal is about the empire. If it was a different medal that didn't have the word empire in it, there would be a different conversation to be had. But he said he didn't like the empire, and this says...
And so did the royal family.
Yeah, but he should be accepting a different medal.
So did the king. He took it off.
It's not even just about not liking the empire. I think most people would view the empire in an overwhelmingly negative light, or view it as, bad things happened. However, it's the fact that...
Bad things happen everywhere.
If you are conceptually against it, which he is, then why would you accept something, as Sean said, with empire in it?
Indeed. Now, look, as we know, those woke warriors at Channel 4 failed to have an impartial bone in their body. But I must admit, even I was taken aback when the broadcast used a showing of The Simpsons to spread their lefty propaganda. So at 6 p.m. last night, after another day of mass walkouts involving teachers, train drivers and civil servants, Channel 4 just happened to air the episode Last Exit to Springfield, where Homer goes up against Mr. Burns, organising a strike at the power plant until the workers' demands are met. And the parallels were there for us all to see.
That's weird.
So we'll march day and night by the big cooling tower. They have the plans, but we have the power.
United will never be defeated. United will never be defeated.
Now, Channel 4 has said that the timing of the episode was simply a coincidence. Oh, yes, of course it was. But if we're going to compare The Simpsons to strike action, there was one obvious similarity that caught my eye. Yeah. Enough said about that. The better. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels do stand by, because coming up, should Dominic Raab really lose his job as a result of an MSM witch hunt, or are civil servants just snowflakes? Well, one of my panellists thinks it's time he left the party. I'll pick that apart in the crowning moment of today's Greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, in Uncancelled, why has the Welsh Rugby Union caved to the woke mob by banning Tom Jones's iconic Delilah from matches? Our man of the people, Charlie Lawson's going to weigh in on what I think is a scandal. We're back in just 2 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And you know this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And this shouldn't really be controversial, really, but sadly it is in 2023. I'm sure you'll have heard of this unofficial anthem sung by Welsh rugby fans. Well, ahead of their Six Nations opener against Ireland, the Welsh Rugby Union have banned the iconic Tom Jones hit from their national stadium because apparently the lyrics trivialise violence against women. Now, only weeks ago, England player Maro Itoje was forced to defend England fans' right to bellow "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," which is under threat for its links to slavery. Now, man of the people, Charlie Lawson, joins me now. Charlie, I mean, what, so we can't sing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," we can't sing "Delilah." I'm going to be honest with you, Charlie, I don't even know what the lyrics are about with those songs. They've taken on a different meaning, haven't they?
I'm trying so hard not for you not to ban me, Dan. I really am. Honest to God, I am so
We would never ban you.
It's I just can't. I mean, Chris Bryant, well, he's got previous for all this nonsense, you know what I mean? And now we've got the Chief Constable, Richard Lewis, who's trying to pander to the noisy minority of wokies. I mean, have they listened to the first line of Bohemian Rhapsody? Mama had just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled the trigger, now he's dead. Are we going to ban that? Are we going to ban... You know, the Welsh Rugby Union are in a bit of trouble because there's been a misogyny sort of report or whatever. So they've suddenly decided, shit, we'd better do something. And what can we do? They clutch at straws and they decide that one of the great songs from the Arms Park or the new stadium, they're going to ban. And I fully expect the great Welsh nation to sing it, grab at their nuts and sing the balls off that bloody song, because this is nonsense. And why are we listening to these idiotic little pillocks?
Yeah, exactly, because
singing,
we have reclaimed these songs. They aren't about what they were initially written about. They've been reclaimed as great fan sport anthems.
Yeah, and Daniel, before anybody out there on Twitter starts saying I'm trivialising domestic violence, let me tell you something. I know all about domestic violence. My Debbie works as assistant manager in a women's refuge, so I know all about it. And the same thing happened in the World Cup. People said that domestic violence was going to explode, and there was an increase at the refuge. Of course there was, but that's alcohol, drugs, and got precious little to do with, what was sung by fans at World Cups, be it rugby, be it football, or anything else. This is just pandering to those silly little pillocks who are running around, waking up, as I've always said, and trying to find something to piss all us silent majority off. Let me tell you, we're not staying quiet much longer.
No, indeed. And if we go down this path, Charlie, there's not going to be able to be any hip-hop or rap songs ever performed again, because you don't even want to know about the themes in some of those little ditties. Now, look, Charlie, this was another shocking story this woke week. 2 theatres in Canada have sparked uproar by planning performances exclusively for an all-black identifying audience. One of the theatres said these blackout showings will provide a safe space for the discussion of black artists' work, and if a non-black person wants to attend, then staff will have to be on hand to have a chat. So in other words, they'll be shown the door. So, Charlie, obviously you're an actor. Do you think that this is an appropriate form of segregation? Because it's very worrying to me.
Well, it's Canada, so it's Trudeau. I spoke to a couple of people in Toronto because I was at the Alex Theatre in 1988, I think it was, and they think it's just it is nonsense. It's divisive. Apart from anything else, it's just creating division when there probably wasn't any. And this is another sort of thing that is happening now. We've had it with BLM and all the rest of it, which became the most divisive thing that's ever happened to this country, in my opinion. We've got Dr. Shola, what's her name, the other day, being totally divisive. Yeah. And that's all it does. It doesn't achieve anything about equality. It doesn't improve the lot of black theatre goers, which, to my knowledge, don't have a problem with going to the theatre at all, no matter what country it's in. If they want to go to the theatre, then go to the theatre. I don't understand this at all, but it doesn't surprise me. But it's just creating division where there was none, in my opinion.
No, couldn't agree more. Charlie Lawson, our man of the people. Charlie, we will speak next week. Thank you so much. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Oh, it's the last one of the week. So, Dominique Samuels, who are you going to go for?
So we know the eco-zealots are currently attacking gas stoves, especially Joe Biden all the way in the United States. Mine is Ron DeSantis for making gas stoves tax-free in Florida. To be honest with this guy, I think I might move to Florida. I'm not going to lie.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind, to be totally honest. Very sunny as well. Sean Bailey, your nominee, please.
My greatest British nominee is Bear Grylls and Reverend Will Vanderhart, who've written a book called Mind Fuel. They were spurred to do this because over 5,200 people died of suicide in 2021, and it's little bits of information to help you build mental resilience. So many people struggling with mental health, it's worth a look.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee for Greatest Britain.
All the teachers that are out on strike this week, because they have my full support.
Oh.
OK, well, I'm actually going to go with an honorary. It's Ron DeSantis in Florida, because honestly, Dominique, I'm with you. Every policy, I'm like, can't he just come and run the Tory party, please?
Some people say Zelensky, I say Ron.
Definitely win under him. OK, Dominic, who's your Union Jackass nominee?
My Union Jackass is actually British Gas, because of the reports that are all over the news of them breaking into vulnerable people's homes and forcibly fitting prepayment meters. Absolutely disgusting in the middle of a cost of living crisis. British Gas are unruly. They need reining in by Ofgem.
It's totally shocking. Sean Bailey, your nominee, please.
My nominee is the New York Times for their continual Britain bashing with a article called A Cautionary Tale of Self-Destruction. What the New York Times should do is concentrate on the massive problems they have in America, and particularly New York. We in Britain will survive. We have always survived. In fact, we survived a lot longer than Americans. Yeah. So he should leave us alone and should concentrate on their own problems.
And that southern border.
Yeah. I cannot believe they're at it again. They literally hate our country. No one should be subscribing to it. Amy Nicole, your nominee.
Mine's Dominic Raab, because he's that guy. He just doesn't know when to leave a party.
do you know what? Do you know what? That's not funny, Amy, actually, because I am absolutely sick and tired of a culture that is starting to pervade this country of guilty before proven innocent.
Yeah, they need evidence. Where's the evidence?
Yeah, this guy's Deputy Prime Minister of the country. He's a Brexiteer, so no wonder they're after him. And Sean Bailey, what? So we're meant to believe from Gina Miller because maybe he was a little bit tough on... Yeah, so these were the first accusations on the record today from The Independent, that maybe because he was a little bit rude behind the scenes of the BBC filming, that is reason for the Deputy Prime Minister to lose his job. Also, Sean, this week, The Times reported on their front page staff saying Dominic Raab was a little bit rude and abrasive. I'm sorry, Sean. This is not reason to sack the bloke.
It's not.
No, he should leave.
It's a high-pressure environment. Of course, people are rude from time to time. That's not a reason to lose your job.
Imagine.
And I hope the next time someone on the opposition is rude, they lose their job too. You have to treat people with consistency, but above all things, where is the proof? Conclusive proof.
Yeah, but this is witch hunt Britain. This is witch hunt Britain because, you know, bullying, what does it mean? What does it mean in the context
not sharing
of a
someone's
workplace?
political view,
It's
apparently.
certainly not being rude and abrasive when you're trying to run the country. And by the way, he's up against the civil service blob who are trying to stop him at every turn. But look, I'm actually going to go with Sean Bailey and the New York Times because their constant attacks on Britain are infuriating me. Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, Amy Nicole, my superstar panel, thank you so much for your company tonight. Thank you for your company all week. I have absolutely loved it. We are back Monday at 9 p.m. Be with us then. Next up, it's Headliners, though. Good night.
He's the king of breakfast TV and he's back. Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already depressed.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest